we're here today. Today we're here to discuss Zimbabwe and the democratic processes in Zimbabwe. So the topic of today is democratic transition and a review under the new dispensation. So living in the United Kingdom, I understand that we live with democratic values, fundamental British values, which are rule of law, respect and tolerance, and individual liberties, which is enshrined typically on the British democracy. And I hope that that's what we're going to have here in this dialogue. So to begin with, I'm going to pass over to Lloyd Msipa to start his presentation.
Okay, next to her.
Because we've got 5 panelists, we decided 10 to 15 minutes?
10 to 15 minutes. Okay.
We have 3 hours, so we are not going to use all of it. We are going to try and...
Okay, good evening everybody. My name is Lloyd Msipa. The hat I'm wearing tonight is for an organization called APRI, Africa Public Policy Research Institute. It's an organization registered here in the UK. It's an African think tank. It is working together with the Zimbabwe government, the various ministries, starting from mines, when we talk of investments, finance, when we talk of looking at how to finance investment in Zimbabwe. So basically it's an organization working with the Zimbabwe government, and it looks at the issues of governance, the issues of investments, the issues of how we can navigate ourselves out of the situation that we're in as Zimbabwe. So all these are efforts that the Zimbabwe government is making to try and get Zimbabwe working again. And under APRI, I do try and play my role, and we look at every situation and take advantage of every opportunity that comes our way to map the way forward. So on this particular subject is obviously Zimbabwe's democratic transition, a review of 1 year under the new dispensation. That is the subject at hand. When I initially looked at this subject, I was trying to work out whether do we start in November 2017 or do we start after the elections? Because both scenarios present different mandates. 2017, the new dispensation was finishing off Robert Mugabe's mandate at the behest of every Zimbabwean. When I say every Zimbabwean, in the sense that every Zimbabwean took part in overthrowing Mugabe, whether it was the citizen, the army, the police, you name it, judiciary, everybody took a part in getting Mugabe to exit. And obviously, Mnangagwa's administration ran until the elections. So I was trying to work out where to start, but I think let's situate the discussion. When you talk of democratic transition, I noted earlier on, Professor Manu mentioned that the process of the democratization process is a slow process. It took Britain over 200 years to be where it's at today. And we are a country less than 40 years old. So we are also going through our own processes. I am mindful of the fact that as Zimbabweans, we are polarized like halfway, 50%. Look at the statistics in terms of the voting. 50-50 polarity, pro and against. So it will take all of us to bridge that gap. And that is where we are now. So when we talk of what a government is what the dictionary definition is government for the people, by the people. Yeah, a system where the whole population or eligible members vote and present members to the people of Zimbabwe. Said we are representing you as representatives, as leaders. But if you look at our situation, it's quite unique because it doesn't necessarily speak to the issue of representation. Let me go on to my presentation. Maybe we can find a way as we go along. Right, democracy is essentially government for the people, by the people. That's the dictionary definition. And obviously all eligible members of society elect their elected representatives. And in our own context, we try and ask the question, who are the people? How is a mandate bestowed to rule on any particular group or person? This is through a constitutional process, which we refer to as elections. That means candidates present themselves, and the best candidates make it to the finals, and then we get the person that makes it to become the one who runs the country. It's a one-man, one-vote system, tyranny of the majority, if you like. But at the end of the day, we have one particular group of people that become the ones in charge of the country for the next 5 years. And this is where we are now. The Electoral Act states that the president, to be declared, must garner 50% of the total votes cast plus one voter, not 51%. It's half of those people who turn up for elections plus one person. That is what our democracy speaks to. So in this regard, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, in this aspect, did deliver on that mandate. It doesn't matter how many times you change the figures after the declaration, as long it was legal for the declared winner to get more than half of the total votes plus that one person, not 51%, half of the voters that turn up at the elections plus that one person. So the complaints raised of bias, abuse of incumbency, intimidation, chiefs, all these are issues that in any normal democracy, if you've got a complaint, you report to the police, you put structures in place, institutional structures that you report to, and their duty is to verify, investigate whatever allegations that you've raised, and then the prosecution will take place from there. So, in our own situation, every political party before the elections signed what we called a peace pledge, that every political party is going to conduct itself in a peaceful manner. Code of conduct, which by the way was largely ignored by, I suppose, most of all the political parties. But you find that the Electoral Commission proceeded to discharge the mandate that it was given. And contrary to what was in the media or to what the parties were saying, it was never up to the Electoral Commission to enforce issues that they did not like. It was an issue that as political parties, they pre-existed before the past parliament, and they were to change the laws that they were now bringing up at this particular current election. So we have a government in place. So when we say, what does it mean when we say democracy has been restored post Mugabe or under Emerson Mnangagwa or the current administration? Some people call it the new dispensation. I would like to call it the Second Republic, because that's what it is. Let's note this. We, as Zimbabweans, or as Zimbabwe, we always had elections every 5 years, like clockwork. So we've always obeyed our constitution. So when we say the democratization process, has it happened or not, what are we talking about? Are we talking about human rights violations? What are we talking about? Are we talking about violations of the Constitution? Are we talking about the failure to align our national laws to our 2013 Constitution? What are we really talking about? We need to have an honest conversation about that. Okay, let's look at the list of achievements of the new dispensation as we speak. We are all aware that from the moment we went into election mode, we had over 100 political parties. We had over 21, 22 presidential candidates. That is an opening up of political space, something that did not exist since 1980. 1980 going forward, we went through stages of one-party states, some parties being banned, but in this particular instance, running up to these elections, we had over 100 political parties that were participating. So that suggests that the democratic space has been opened. Like any other system, we will have contradictions. The August 1 shootings, for instance, those are contradictions in a system that is moving forward. Because when a system is moving forward, a train is looking to slow down, catch up, and proceed and go forward. So August 1 shootings, the Atlantic Commission, any self-respecting dispensation will do what this ED has done by appointing this particular commission. Right? I will not go out of my way to try and look at whatever aspect it will conclude to, but the point is we've got a commission in place that will speak to whatever happened in August 1, on the 1st of August. We should never judge the current dispensation based on what we don't know the outcome of yet. So August 1 is still subject. Mindful of the fact that we are aware that the High Court has ruled that the Minister of Defense did deploy those soldiers. But this particular commission is looking at what actually happened throughout. We hear of a lot of things. We hear of incitement from opposition political leaders. We hear of shotguns and handguns being used to shoot citizens. We hear of bodies being dumped at Pareniatwa. We hear of armed businessmen protecting their shops from looting. We hear of the army using the AK-47. So all these are issues that are confronting us as Zimbabweans. It is an ongoing exercise. So it would not be prudent on our part to make conclusions in that regard. But as Zimbabweans, because of our polarity, we've all drawn conclusions to something that is still going forward. Right. Let me move on from there. The issue of the polarity results in a lot of things. For example, you opposite MDC and the top leadership, who are all lawyers, officers of the court. They've also played a role in incitement, in actually stoking up emotions in a very polarized society. So we all need to take responsibility of where we are today. The record will show that more than 10 utterances that were made at their party level saying that if we lose this election, we will render Zimbabwe ungovernable. They are alleged rigging, despite the outcome of the election, despite the pronouncement of the highest court in the land, which is the Constitutional Court. So as lawyers, one would have thought that after the decision of the Constitutional Court, there will be a respect to that decision. I mean, we all saw what happened in Parliament yesterday. That does not speak to citizens that respect the outcome of the highest court in the land. So, that is what is going on out there. Let me speak about the things that are actually happening in the engine room, which is the government of Zimbabwe, the ED administration. When you are democratizing a government, in this particular instant, we're talking about a government that has been corrupted over a period of 30 to 40 years. When you are democratizing a government, you start from within. If anybody has taken time to check what has been happening within the Public Service Commission, you find that there's been a lot of changes within the Public Service Commission. For instance, the new head of the Public Service Commission is one Vincent Wumbe, the guy who used to work for the UN. And they've actually appointed, 4 or 5 other commissioners within the Public Service Commission, because it has been an inside process going out. The Public Service Commission is now run by new people, led by Civil Servant Dr. Vincent Wumbe, former UNDP Additional Technical Advisor, and with other commissioners that are technocrats. So these are the things that are happening within the engine room, making these changes. security sector, for instance, you know, when the new dispensation took over in November 2017, the VP Chiwenga was dubbed in as both VP and Minister of Defense. After the elections, what happened is no longer that has been changed. So that speaks to a government that is seeking to change itself, is leaning towards a democratization process. Chiwenga is being redeployed from the Minister of Defense to a statutory instrument. So the VP no longer runs that ministry. And then we have legislation like POSA being reviewed in line with the 2013 Constitution. All these are things that are happening in the engine room. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. For the benefit that don't understand what POSA is, could you please elaborate?
Right. POSA is subsidiary legislation that is in place in Zimbabwe, Public Order and Security Act. It was characterized, under the old constitution, we had subsidiary legislation, and POSA was one of them. And what its purpose, it served to control, or later on to constrict the democratic space in Zimbabwe. But after the new dispensation took over, it pretty much, by and large, ignored the role of POSA as we speak. And it is one of those pieces of legislation that is due for realignment as a process of, as the new constitution kicks in. So, if I done just,
Thank you.
Yeah. So, the long and short of it all, as leaders, we are responsible for where we take our people, whether in opposition or whether in the ruling party. Chamisa and company are leaders. What was their conduct like during the elections and after the elections? Are we seeing leadership in their conduct as opposition? The purpose of any opposition, whether in the UK or anywhere else, is to keep the ruling party in check. Parliamentary process, you saw what happened yesterday. The ideal would have been to sit in the budget, and then when the debate comes up, they attack what they essentially call the weaknesses of the budget presented. But that did not happen. So these are things we need to have an honest conversation about. ED has been in office for less than 100 days. July 31, add an extra month to allow for the court process, constitutional court process. He has not been there that long. Because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The future of the country will depend on how, as Zimbabweans, we look at ourselves and conduct ourselves, whether we're in the ruling party or the opposition. I would like to present or make my declaration that as Zimbabwe, I think we are on the path. We are doing the right things. Our institutions are responding, or whether legal, economic, or legislative, to the democratization process, economic recovery. We are all mindful of the transitional stabilization program presented by the Minister of Finance. That speaks to governance, macroeconomic stability and re-engagement. It speaks to inclusive growth. It speaks of infrastructural and utilities growth and social development. This is an all-inclusive. It doesn't speak to the economics, but it addresses the political fundamentals as well. But it requires that all of us come on board. Most of us listened to the budget yesterday, and what it requires all of us to do. So for me, considering that the democratization process is a slow, maybe a painful process, but I think we are pretty much on our way there. Those are my thoughts.